Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kings of Fantasy Football. I'm your co-host, Pablo, and here's my co-host.
Leo.
On today's episode, we are going to be discussing starts and sits for Week 10 of the fantasy football season. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So we're going to start with quarterbacks. The first quarterback that I would start is going to be Joe Burrow of the Bengals. They face the Ravens on Thursday Night Football, but the first matchup that they had was the shootout. And if T. Higgins comes back, I think he's going to continue to pass the ball. He just had 5 touchdowns last week, so I think he's going to continue that trend against the Ravens. So that is the first quarterback that I would start. What you, Leo?
The first quarterback that I'm gonna start this week is Sam Darnold. He had a little uh, he's still been after his bye on week 6. He's averaging over 20 fantasy points still. He just got T.J. Hawkinson back, and this week they're gonna be going up against Jacksonville, who are allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season. Any this past week, Jalen Hurts, rocked them for almost 34 fantasy points. Derek May has lit him up for 25 fantasy points. Even Caleb Williams. So, um, you know, so any quarterback that faces them is due for a big game. So if you got him, roll with them.
Okay. Um, the next quarterback that I would start is going to be against my home team of the Texans. So I would start Jared Goff against the Texans. Our secondary has continued to give up big yards to receiving cores, and I don't think that prime time will do them any favors there. Um, so for that reason, I think that the Lions wide receivers should have favorable matchups. Um, the Packers had a good game against our secondary, and the Jets as well. Both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson have good games. So don't see again this week being any different. So that was Jared Goff of the Lions. Who is your next?
So my next pick, you might have to have a little bit of cojones to start this guy, but that's the world we live in today, and that's gonna be Daniel Jones. Uh, like this might be obviously if you have your studs, you're good to go, but sometimes you are in a deeper league, and you don't have love this week, stuff like that. There's a few fantasy studs that are out this week, so if that's the vote that you're in, a streamer this week is Daniel Jones. This past week against the Commanders, he scored 28 fantasy points, and this week they're playing against the Carolina Panthers, who are allowing the fourth most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. So that's someone to look at there for sure.
Okay, gonna have to be up early to watch that game over there in Germany, but I like it. Um, you know what I'm more surprised of Jones is his rushing. Like
Yeah,
that guy can run. So
yeah,
I like
he's
that.
a dual threat. He's a dual threat for sure. So he always surprisingly he does plays with his legs.
So moving on to running backs. The first running back that I would start should be a no-brainer, and I'm not going to apologize to any Cowboys fans who are listening. That's going to be Saquon Barkley of the Eagles, who faces the Cowboys. And even though Micah Parsons may be back, I just think that the defense has too many holes. They've given up really big games to players like Kamara, Henry, so don't see why Saquon cannot do the same. So first running back that I would definitely start is Saquon Barkley. Who would you start?
My first running back that I'm going to start. I'm actually going to double up in that Giants game. And that's going to be Tracy, Tyrone Tracy. He's he he almost didn't play last week because he was recovering from a concussion, but he did come back, and he had another phenomenal game. Devin Singletary, if you have him, you might want to let him go. He might he's he's not doing too well over the last couple of weeks, but he did play. He's gonna play. They're going up against the Carolina, who are allowing the most fantasy points to running backs this year, and that should be. I think that this game might be a little high scoring, to be honest with you.
Okay. Now, before we move on, forgot to mention the sits at quarterbacks. So the first quarterback that I would sit is going to be Trevor Lawrence. He has a really tough matchup playing against the Vikings defense, who Brian Flores has been doing really well with coaching that defense. So even though they are playing in Jacksonville, still don't think that if I had to start Trevor Lawrence that I would, just because again the Vikings defense has been doing it really well this year. Who's the first quarterback that you would sit?
Well, don't get mad at me, but I'm gonna say your quarterback, C.J. Stroud. There, I know, he's lost two of his toys, Nico Collins and Diggs, unfortunately, for the rest of the year. Hopefully Nico comes back soon. Is he coming back this week or not yet? Or it's gonna be next week, right?
He is supposed to be playing Sunday night.
This week? Oh, okay. Well, if he does, then he might, you might want to scratch this. Just monitor that. Just monitor the situation. Because I wasn't sure if he was gonna finally come back or not. If he doesn't come back, definitely someone to think about sitting. I know he's a stud, but if Collins comes back, then I know you're gonna have to throw him in there. I did have Lawrence as well as one of my sits, so those are just a couple of guys there. I have one more guy after you guys there.
Okay. Now the next quarterback that I would sit, he's been showing some flashes. I'm not gonna lie, but just with the matchup that he's going against is going to be Bo Nix. Bo Nix to me has been again surprising this year. He's been pretty decent, even had some fantasy relevant games this year, but he is facing the Chiefs, who are still undefeated. So he had a 38-point game against Carolina. He still scored 20 fantasy points against Baltimore. So for that reason, and they're playing at Kansas City, I would not start Nix. And then who's your other guy?
My other quarterback to sit this week is gonna be Drake May. He has been showing some promise, but unfortunately this week he's gonna be going up against the Chicago Bears defense, who are allowing the fewest points to fantasy to quarterbacks this season. So they they're tough. They're he is gonna they are gonna he is going to be playing them on the road, and just someone to sit. You know, this past week they locked down Kyler Murray, and he only had 4.76 fantasy points this past week. So that's what I'm saying. You might want to, if you have to start, you've been starting May, like in deeper leagues or whatnot, you might want to sit him down this week.
Yeah, definitely, definitely agree. So back to running back. So my first running back was Saquon. The next running back that I would start um, is going to be Bijan of the Falcons. Again, the Saints defense is trending downward. You're now 2 at 7, 1 at 3 at home. So that Falcons offense is looking good. So for that reason, I think Bijan should have a good day, even though I know last week Algier had a touchdown. Some Bijan owners were not happy, but I still think Bijan should have a good game against the Saints. Who's your next running back that would start?
So my next running back to start is going to be James Cook. He's gonna, he's going up against the Colts. They're mid-pack defense that um that they haven't, done much holding, controlling, controlling running backs this season. And Cook, he's been fairly consistent, scoring double-digit points most of the year. And there should be another week that he should be able to score some points there.
Okay. Now for running back that I would sit. First running back that I would sit is going to be um, Brian Robinson Jr. of the Commanders. He's facing a good run defense. This week they are facing the Steelers. So even though Commanders offense has been doing really well with Jaden Daniels, still think that the matchup is not favorable for Brian Robinson. Of course, if you have to start him, like in my case, I have to start him. But if you have other running backs that you could start who have more favorable matchups, I would sit Brian Robinson. Who would you sit?
All right, so the first running back that I would sit this week is gonna be Rico Dottle. He came back to the lineup last week and had a pretty nice game, scoring 21.70 fantasy points in PPR leagues. But this week he's going up against the Eagles for allowing the fourth fewest fantasy points to running backs this season. They've over the last couple of weeks, they held the Jaguars. Etienne only had 24 rushing yards. Um, Even Tyrone Chasey, that he's been doing well these last 3 weeks or so. He held him to 23 fantasy. Sorry, 23 rushing yards as well. Even Chase Brown, that he's been phenomenal. He's been the only running back that scored double-digit fantasy points against them, Chase Brown, and that was only 11 points. And this is over since they've returned from their bye. So their run defense has tightened up, and so if you used Dotto last week, you might want to think again because you might have a tough time this week against the Eagles run defense.
Rivalry game. Those are always tough, so definitely would sit Dowdle. And the next running back that I would sit is going to be Rashad White and or Bucky Irving. They are facing the 49ers, who are coming off a bye, so I'm sure that bye really has helped that defense get some energy back. Um, Even though they're playing in Florida, but just think that the that run defense is not a favorable matchup. And the game last night, even though White did have a touchdown, the yards that him and Irving gained weren't anything crazy. So for that reason, I would just sit Bucks running backs against the Niners. Would you sit?
This might be a no-brainer at this point. But I'm going to also include his running mate, and that's Travis Etienne. At this point, we can't trust him anymore. He's basically splitting carries with Tank Bixby. Both of them, I would bench both of them this week, even though Bixby has been playing better this over the last few weeks. But this week they're going up against a really stout Minnesota Vikings defense that allow the seventh fewest fantasy points to running backs. So either one of them, you should look elsewhere because neither one should do much this week against a tough Vikings run defense.
Right. Now, moving on to wide receivers. Kind of already mentioned it earlier when I mentioned that you should start Goff, and you should start his number one receiver in Amon-Ra this week. Again, Texans secondary has just been giving up big play after big play so far this year. So for that reason, I would definitely start Amon-Ra. Who would you start?
All right, so first guy I'm going to start this week is going to be Deebo Samuel. They're gonna be going up against a Buccaneers defense that they've been scored on lately. Even the Chiefs that shockingly they've been very lackluster on offense since Rashee Rice has gone down. This past week, last night, and on Monday night, sorry, they had had a coming out party with DeAndre Hopkins, and I believe Samuel with Purdy, they had a week to get rested. Everyone should be on the same page, and they're going up against Tampa Bay this week. Again, that they've allowed the sixth most fantasy points to receivers this season. So Deebo should be fired up for sure this week.
Really like that. Hoping he has a game after the bye week. So my next receiver that I would start is going to be Tyreek Hill. I think now that Tua is back, he's trending upward, and I think he's due for a big game. Even though he's telling everyone to start him as soon as Tua was back, it didn't really translate into that. But I think again he's due for a breakout game, and for the Dolphins it's a do or die situation. So I think they're really going to need him to step up. You guys want any chance to make playoffs? So Tyreek Hill is the wide receiver that I would that I would start. Who's your next guy?
My next start this week is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. with the Jaguars. I know you said that you have Lawrence as a sit, but they are going to be probably down against the Vikings. With the Vikings probably jumping up ahead on them. They even though they have a stout run defense, their secondary is where they have a chink in the armor. and that's where that they allow the second most fantasy points to receivers this season. So Thomas should get back on track this week. Christian Kirk's out is gone for the year, and that should only increase his chances of getting more targets going forward. So Brian Thomas Jr. is my other start for the week at receiver.
All right. Now, wide receiver that I would sit, or that you want to think about sitting. The first wide receiver that I would sit is going to be what is his name? From the Bears, DJ Moore. So last week, assuming that it wasn't anything major, I know Caleb Williams did go down at some point. I don't know if there's anything major, but I feel like last week that offense was not clicking. At the Cardinals, they only scored 9 points. Even though they're facing the Patriots, I just at least the last 2 games again that offense has not been clicking. So for that reason, I would sit DJ Moore this week against the Patriots. Would you sit?
All right, so this one might be a tough pill to swallow, but if obviously if you don't have no choice, obviously with teams on bye and whatnot, but he does have a toughest matchup this week, and one person I'm thinking about sitting, if obviously if you have good options, is Marvin Harrison Jr. He's going up against this week against the Jets, which means there's a lot of Sauce Gardner in his future. That he usually shadows the number one receiver. So if you do have to start him, just temper those expectations, because it might not be you might not be too happy over his last 5 games. He's only had one game that's been double digit fantasy points, and that was against the Dolphins, which was shockingly who doesn't have a good game against the Dolphins lately. But other than that, every game has been very very putrid scoring. So there's someone to contemplate sitting this week.
Okay. Now, the last wide receiver that I would sit is going to be from my hometown. It's going to be Tank Dell. This is assuming that Collins does come back. He did have over 100 yards, had a lot of targets against the Jets, but that was without Collins. So I think if Collins does play Sunday night, need to temper those expectations of him repeating that production, since he's the default number one now that Diggs is out and Collins has been out. So I would sit Tank Dell. Your last sit.
1 second here, looking. Okay, my other sit this week is going to be 1 second. I was just trying to look at his roster sheet here. Even though it's from my home team, like at this point, it's really tough to start Jalen Waddle. Even though Tua's come back, he still hasn't had a double digit fantasy point since since week 1 against the Jaguars. Since then, every game has been under 10 fantasy points. Um, and like I said, to me, it's I have him in a couple leagues, and I gotta bench him because he's just killed me. Um, and I'm sure if you have him, you can relate. He's like I said, he hasn't scored double digit fantasy points in a long time, and now it's come to a point that he's got to prove himself a game or two before I can trust him again and put him back in the lineup. Obviously if you're in the with injuries and buys, you have to do what you have to do. But just some the to me he's a sit this week, Jalen Waddle.
Right. Now, moving on to tight ends. The first tight end that I would start, I actually mentioned that you should pick him up if he's available, but then it's going to be Cade Otton. He had a really good game against the Chiefs, and now they're facing somewhat similar defense in the Niners. So I think, if Mike Evans is still out, those targets are going to continue to go Cade Otton's way. So that is the first tight end that I would start.
All right. So the first tight end I'm gonna talk about that you should probably throw him in your lineup is gonna be T.J. Hawkinson. Uh, he had his first game back last week. Got his feet wet, you know, getting acclimated with Sam Darnold. They threw four passes to him. He got three receptions and had a 27 yard. Like I said, very super modest numbers, but like I said, they're playing Jacksonville this week, and you should see his roster his snap share start to rise, and he should have a good week this week against the Jaguars that are allowing the 10 most fantasy points to tight ends this year.
I would not have started him last week in his first week back. I think, giving him time to acclimate. So
Yeah.
I agree. I think that he should continue to see more targets, more snap share moving forward. The next tight end that I would start, I think a lot of managers were happy in the game last night. A lot of people have been saying that Father Time hasn't been too kind. And that is going to be Travis Kelce of the Chiefs. He had, I think, 10 catches over 100 yards yesterday. So, I feel like this matchup against the Broncos this week, still playing in Kansas City, should continue to see those type of targets, even with Hopkins there, because he might have gotten touchdowns, but he was still getting targets. You would start.
All right. So my start of the week is like I said, if you don't have them, if you pick them up this week, I kind of mentioned in the waiver wire, and that's Mike Gesicki. He's playing the Ravens on Thursday night, so throw him in there because he's gonna the it's looking like T Higgins is gonna miss another game. He hasn't practiced today as well, as well as yesterday. So yeah, it's a couple of days, and he's running out of time to get in there. Gesicki, over the last couple of weeks has had over a about 6.5 targets, and this past week he had 2 touchdowns with a couple of touchdowns. So they're gonna have to use him for sure, because that you know that the Ravens are going to score some points on them on the Bengals. So if you have the Gesicki, fire him up. He should be a good to go this week.
All right. Now, tight end that I would sit. Um, I feel like I'm picking on my hometown, but I mean it's the matchup. The Lions have been good on both sides of the ball, so there's going to be Dalton Schultz. The Texans, they're facing a stingy Lions defense who got upgraded um, before the trade deadline, so she's going to continue to add to their already good defense. So that was Dalton Schultz. The Texans, who would you? While you're thinking of the tight ends that I can go on to my next one. Um, the next tight end that I would
Oh,
sit is going to be, I'm kind of piggybacking off of what you had mentioned earlier in the matchup. So I'm gonna say Jake Ferguson of the Cowboys. Does not have a favorable matchup in playing against the Eagles rivalry game. No Dak Prescott, he's going to be out, so Cooper Rush don't know how he's going to do. So I would sit Vic Ferguson of the Cowboys.
yeah, that's who I had. As I was talking, my
Nice.
mic was muted. Yeah, no, Ferguson for sure. He's my first set of the week for sure. He's no Dak Prescott. God knows when he's gonna come back. He's he's out for the foreseeable future, and the Eagles are allowing the fourth fewest fantasy points to tight ends this week. So definitely he's a sit for me. Um, Another tight end to think about sitting is Sam Laporta. He's kind of been like the missing link these this year. He's had like only two games that he's had a double digit fantasy points. Um, over this last couple of games, he only out of those two games, one of them came over the last couple of weeks that it was because Jamison Williams was out due to a suspension, but now he is coming back this week, and he's playing against the your Texans, and that they allow the fewest fantasy points to tight ends. So to me, Laporta is a sit this week.
Okay. Finally, something positive from, I feel like I've been picking on them. So moving on to defenses. So the defense that I would start, um, I mentioned them earlier, um, and that is the Vikings facing Jacksonville. Um, Again, that Brian Flores defense been doing really well um, this year. Just some stats. So they're the number two defense in fantasy last week. Um, they had 3 sacks against the Colts. Against Detroit, who has a high-powered offense, they still have 4 sacks. So would definitely start them at Jacksonville this week. Who would you start?
I'm gonna start the kind of like what we talked about a little earlier, with Dak being out. I want to start the Eagles this week. They Dak's gonna be out. Cooper Rush is in. You know, kind of one of I feel that the Cowboys offense is not gonna be running on all cylinders. CeeDee Lamb is a little hurt as well. Not sure if he's gonna play with a shoulder injury. Um, and the Cowboys are allowing the 11th most fantasy points to opposing defenses this year. So I would fire up the Eagles if you got them.
Right. Now, the next defense that I would start, um, and I'm just going based off of how they did last week, which happened to be against the Texans, going to be the Jets. I know the Cardinals and Texans are not the same team at all, but I think Jets are in that do or die mode, and they need to essentially, win out. So I think their defense is going to have to dictate that. Kyler Murray did not do well last week at all. So Sauce Gardner and that defensive front, even though Kyler's a little bit more mobile, I do think that the Jets defense should do well.
All right. My other defense to start this week is going to be the Chargers. They're playing the Tennessee Titans this week. That they're allowing the most fantasy points to opposing defenses this week. The Chargers have been fairly hot since coming back from their bye, and they've been very very productive on defense. So couple of that with the last couple of games they had 12 fantasy points against the Saints a couple of weeks ago. Last week against the red hot Jameis Winston and the Browns offense, they had 18 points on them. And then now, like I said, they play the Titans this week that allow the most fantasy points. So I'll definitely roll with them this week. After this, they get four really tough games against the Bengals, Ravens, Falcons, and the Chiefs. So, like I said, this is like a 1 week streamer. After this, you might want to dump them. But we got to win a week at a time, and we're talking about this week.
Now, defense that I would sit is going. We talked about it earlier. Is going to be the Saints. Their defense has been trending downward. If I'm not mistaken, they have lost 7 in a row. So, giving up, points, and I know people didn't expect them to lose last week, and it was against Bryce Young. He still lost the week before that. 26 points, 33 points, and 51, so averaging over 20. And I think Falcons definitely have the firepower to go over that. So that is the Saints that I would sit. Who do you say?
All right, so this defense, like I said, it's. I'm sure it's gonna be tough for you to say if you have them. You might want to have a backup defense because I know you don't want to drop them. But this is the defense I would really think about setting is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're facing the Commanders this week. That their offense has been on fire. They've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to opposing defenses this season, and not even one defense has scored double-digit fantasy points against them. So for me, if like I said, I know if you have the Steelers, you're probably gonna go with them anyway, but I wouldn't try to get a streamer for the week because Commanders have been on fire.
All right. And the next defense that I would say we've been talking about them is going to be the Cowboys defense. Even if Michael Parsons comes back because he's been out the last 2 weeks, I just think that team has too many holes on defense to start against the Eagles, whose offense has been clicking as of late. So I would Cowboys, and who's your last defense?
So this defense, like I said, it's if you have, I'm sure you're gonna start him too. But you know, today I feel like I have cojones this week, so I'm gonna say I also sit the Ravens. They're playing the Bengals on Thursday night. To me, this is gonna be a shootout. Um, the Burrow usually has a really good game against them. Uh, and like I said, this game's gonna be. I'm really looking forward to this game on Thursday night. So, if you have them, I'm sure you got to start them, but you might want to temper those expectations because it might not be pretty.
I hope from a Burrow owner perspective that it is a shootout. I don't know. I hope so, but man, these Thursday games, I really don't like starting players on Thursdays.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for tuning in to start/sit episode. Um, please follow us on Twitter. Listen in on your favorites podcast platform in Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Drop a like, drop a follow. Greatly appreciate it. If you have questions, you can reach me on X. That is at Arch Reaper. Leo, where can they reach you?
Yeah, if you have any fantasy questions, you can reach me on X as well at Smooth1074. Be more than happy to help you. Um, like Pablo said, if you like the show, give us a follow, tell a friend, subscribe, helps us, and share it on social media. We're here to help as much as we can. And good luck this week.
Good luck, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
Peace.